Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Today's episode is a recap of the race weekend at Homestead, Miami, and we have plenty to talk about. I'm also going to take you into my personal life, and more specifically, as you saw in the thumbnail, one of my passions outside of NASCAR, and that's disc golf. This past weekend, the Disc Golf Pro Tour made its annual stop in Austin. I was out there and talked to numerous pros who signed this disc that I'm going to give away later. And I have a couple of brief interviews with two players who are big NASCAR fans. I think you'll enjoy hearing what they have to say about their passion for the sport. And you're going to be absolutely shocked when you see who the male player looks like. However, before we get to that, let's go back to Friday and a story I wrote for Athlon Sports on the news that the CW announced the upcoming Xfinity Series broadcast would be remote. I've talked about this numerous times on the channel in the past, specifically about Fox doing it for the Truck Series. Now, the CW has joined the remote party, and fans weren't happy about it, especially the way it was positioned by the network's president, who said, quote, "We promised fans that we would constantly innovate. This new stage and technology will allow us to bring the fans into a fully immersive racing environment," end quote. One fan summed it up best, quote, "The production being at the track would seem to be fully immersive to me," end quote. On Saturday, there were a couple of times where the remote setup proved problematic, including one when there was smoke on the track and the broadcast team didn't know its source and were left to speculate on what car it was coming from. Just frustrating to know that this is the way of the future and fans can't do anything about it. I have more on the Xfinity Series race in a bit. Earlier on the day Saturday, there were media availabilities, and multiple drivers were asked about the Gen 7 car, and with Goodyear's experimenting over the last year with softer tire compounds, did they believe it had improved the short track racing product? Take a listen to what Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch had to say about it.
Do you feel like that short track racing has gotten better since the next gen car first showed up?
Seems like it. I mean, it seems like it's better, for sure. And it seems like it's large in part to the tire, truthfully. You know, and the more I kind of look at it, the more I kind of just feel like, man, maybe this tire thing is really, we're on to something there. But if there's one thing I've learned throughout my course of doing this is that just when you think you start to figure something out, you didn't and you don't. And whatever you think you know, you probably didn't to begin with. So I certainly don't act like I have the answers, but I do think the tire thing, seemingly from the gains that we've made, is pretty important considering it's, you know, what touches the ground.
I think that the tire has helped quite a bit. Now, it's been an evolution, though, because like I talked about, when the disparity from the fastest car to the slowest car was much bigger when we started next gen, you know, it was still tighter than what it was with the Gen 6 car. Over time, it has tightened up. But what the tire is doing is starting to spread that back out in the long run. So it's certainly bringing a lot of positives. Goodyear's, you know, testing themselves right now to try to get softer at all racetracks, which is going to be a bonus. There's every racetrack we've talked about this year, you know, and it being a better race, which it has been. You can really contribute to the changes that we made in the tires and creating more tire fall off. That is absolutely the equation that we've been searching for, wanting, and we're finally getting it, and it's showing in the show that you're seeing on Sundays.
No, the racing has definitely not gotten better with the next gen at short tracks. Why that is, I don't know. We've tried different aero packages, we've tried different tires. I think it's just the similarity in all the parts and pieces and everybody being the same. You know, eventually everybody's going to figure out how to attack this car and what makes it go fast. And, you know, we've got a guy, Boswell, from another team from last year, and our Vegas setup from last year to this year with their Vegas setup that they had was really close. You know what I mean? Like, we're within a couple 100 pounds on each spring rate and some other stuff. So when everybody figures out what the best way is to skin the cat, there's only one way to skin the cat. So I feel like the more we go, it's going to get even more tougher with guys being just good at these tracks and passing becoming even harder.
I have said numerous times in the past about how I appreciate Busch's honesty. I still do, but I think he's completely wrong here. And all I'll point to are the responses from Elliott and Hamlin. They summed it up best. During practice and qualifying, there was only one thing I thought was noteworthy, and it was regarding Hamlin and his new sponsorship with Progressive Insurance. Listen to this exchange between Mike Joy and Kevin Harvick about the number 11 car.
And their logo fits really nicely down the side of these cars with the number slid forward. So happy for Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin to put that to bed.
Social media will explode. What are you trying to do?
That's fine.
That number controversy, I thought we were past that. Apparently not.
I have to agree with Harvick here. That scheme looks really good for Hamlin, and it wouldn't work if the number was in the middle where it used to be. And now let's move on to later in the afternoon in the Xfinity Series race. After spinning and winning the night before, Kyle Larson was the dominant car on Saturday. I mean, he took domination to another level as he was out to a 14-second advantage over second place Sam Mayer and put every car a lap down all the way up to sixth place late in the race. Yeah, that kind of domination. But as you've likely heard and seen by now, a late caution came out, and in the subsequent restart, Justin Allgaier, who has lost so many races late after dominating for much of the day, found himself in a role reversal and was the benefactor of the late caution and went on to win the race on the 1.5-mile track. Larson finished fourth and was unhappy about it.
I can't go when my rear tires are off the ground, so I know it looks like I choked another one away, but I did everything I thought I could, and the 41 just lagged back and slammed the shit out of me. So, bummer.
What you've also heard is how Mayer made a mistake on that restart and mistimed it. I thought it was funny how even the NASCAR Xfinity X account posted that exact quote. It's because no one really believed him. I was recording the number 41's radio moments before the restart, and he talked about his plans for that restart. Listen to this.
What's your thoughts on the restart here? Me and P2?
Oh, I'm picking behind him. I don't give a shit.
I think you pick behind him and shove him, grab his right rear into one.
Nailed it.
I think it's pretty clear with his I don't give a bleep, where he ultimately decided to line up and instructions from his spotter on shoving him that it was hardly a mistake and mistimed. And after Larson's Sunday Cup race, it stings all the more knowing he could have had a sweep for the weekend at Miami. Speaking of the race, let's jump to Sunday and the first stage. Heading into the day, I wanted to keep an eye on Ty Gibbs, especially after practice the day before, when he ran some good times and was near Kyle Larson's times on the long runs. However, those numbers didn't translate to qualifying, where the number 54 qualified 13th. 20 laps into the race, the 22-year-old had dropped from 13th to 18th. On lap 50, he had fallen back to 22nd. It was pretty much what we have seen from the number 54 team for most of the season. It would only get worse. Meanwhile, up at the front, pole sitter Alex Bowman led the first 8 laps, and then Ryan Blaney, who started 6th, showed he had a strong car and raced to the lead, where he stayed until lap 32 and the first round of green flag pit stops. After the pit cycle was complete, the 2023 Cup champion returned to the point and stayed there even after Christopher Bell's caution for a spin, and he won that first stage. Blaney was followed by Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Larson, and Austin Cindric. During the stage break, Ty Gibbs provided feedback to his team on how the car was handling.
What you have there to start?
Just evil, just plowing, sliding out of the track, uncontrollable.
Thinking about it last night after the race, I realized there weren't any loose wheel issues on pit road as we saw the week before at Las Vegas. It seems like the pit crews had worked out the kinks and were clean on pit road. That didn't mean pit road didn't have some action. That came during the stage break in the close quarters when the drivers tried to make it 4 wide. It didn't work as Josh Berry and Joey Logano did some synchronized spinning and were pointing the wrong direction when all was said and done. Kyle Larson was also involved and had a nasty hole by his exhaust. Once the race resumed 20 laps into it, and Ty Gibbs' frustration with his ill-handling car boiled over, when his spotter Tony Hirschman told him that the higher line he was running through turns 1 and 2 was slower.
I plow my brains out the fucking bottom.
10-4. We can't run the bottom. Just got to round the entry off. You were better up there. I know we're not great. We'll keep working on it.
Something else also happened around this same time when Mike Joy welcomed the viewers from the IndyCar race because the broadcast on the main Fox channel was having technical difficulties. All I could think was after IndyCar fans had gotten all of the best from Fox early on because it was the network's new pet project, including their flashy commercials, they were being introduced to Fox's real coverage. The honeymoon was officially over. I even flipped over to see what was happening on Fox when I saw this. And just a reminder, this is with the audio on.
A new postseason tournament on Fox.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh because they showed just a few seconds of racing action with no audio and immediately cut to commercial. Oh, how NASCAR fans can totally relate. Later in that second stage, I made a couple of notes on some of the bigger names who were struggling, and they included Bell, Logano, and Kyle Busch, all who were running a lap down and running 30th or worse. Busch was battling side by side with Shane Van Gisbergen for 32nd position. William Byron was running second and fast approaching the two-lap Chevrolets, trying to keep up with the leader Ryan Blaney, who had already passed the two cars and had a 3-second plus advantage. Annoyed that Busch and SVG were running side by side and inhibiting his ability to get past him, the Hendrick Motorsports driver expressed his frustration over the team radio.
They're racing for fucking last.
2 Chevrolets.
Ouch! Taking shots at your bow tie teammates. In the stage's closing laps, Hamlin and Larson on 7-lap fresher tires closed in and passed Blaney. The number 11 driver won the stage, and he was followed by Larson, Blaney, Byron, and Bubba Wallace. Remember that narrow pit road? During the stage break, Chase Elliott attempted to make a move on it, and NASCAR nabbed him for not entering pit road in a single file. Elliott tried to plead his case.
We got a penalty for not being single file coming on the pit road.
I just have them look at it because I gave the spot back. They all checked up. I moved left to not run in the back of someone, and then I gave him the spot back before I even turned down. Just have them look at it. That's a very reasonable thing.
Alan, that's going to be on you talking to them down here. They don't want to hear it up here.
I'm trying. There was zero advantage there. Was simply just trying to not hit the guy. I mean, I don't know what they want. I don't know what to do any different.
Just stay in line here, but pull over if they don't return this penalty here before the cone.
So newsflash, they're not interested in anything but their decision. So that's where we're at. Yeah, it was a lot of fun when we used to be able to race, but now it's just go back to law school. Got to be a litigator. So many rules. I honestly, truthfully, don't understand that one, but all good. Yeah, it's just like everything else. There's a box, and you got to fit into a box. So if you're different, you're going to be penalized.
In that final stage, Kyle Larson jumped out to the early lead but couldn't hold off Bubba Wallace. The number 23 car led for the next 35 laps until Ryan Blaney, who had led for a race-high 124 laps and was running in third, saw his car go up in smoke, literally with 60 laps to go. Take a look at the view from Denny Hamlin's car, who was running in fourth. If you'll recall, that's the second time in 3 weeks the number 12 car engine has grenaded. The other race last weekend in Las Vegas, Blaney crashed. That's 3 consecutive DNFs. Wallace reclaimed the lead on the restart, but was eventually caught by Alex Bowman. And to no one's surprise, Larson eventually caught his HMS teammate with 6 laps to go and cruised to victory. It was another entertaining race from Homestead, and yet another example of why NASCAR should consider moving the championship to the Florida track. Rumors are it could possibly happen next year. We shall see. As I noted earlier, I was keeping tabs on Ty Gibbs. He finished 25th for his 4th finish of 25th or worse this season. Another interesting statistic on the number 54 pilot, he now is officially tied with J.J. Yaley as the longest tenured Joe Gibbs Racing driver without a win at 77 races. Next week at Martinsville, where in 5 starts his best finish is 18th, he could set a dubious new mark for the 4-car organization. All right, and now let's talk about what I mentioned in the beginning, my love for disc golf. I know there are others of you out there who are disc golf fans as well. In fact, some are NASCAR drivers. I actually gave Sheldon Creed and Eric Jones a couple of discs at Daytona after learning about their interest in the game. So this weekend, with a disc golf pro tour in town, I went and attended my 3rd consecutive year of the event to watch the best players in the world. But this year was different, as my friends at Mint Disc, who also own Sprinkle Valley, where 2 rounds of this year's tournament were played, put me in contact with tour officials because I wanted to connect with a couple of players who I knew were NASCAR fans. The first interview is with Kat Mertsch. She is one of the most popular female players on the tour, and once you see her interview, you'll know why. They talk about NASCAR lacking personalities. Kat has one, for sure. I followed her for her opening round on Thursday, and we sat down for a quick chat afterward. First, let's talk about your round. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you don't even know this, but the talk right now is you hitting that first sign.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So talk about that, because that was obviously something very unique.
Oh, I broke it. I'm so sorry. Whoops. It wasn't what I was trying to do, but it just, when you're waking up before the sun's coming over the horizon, it can kind of happen sometimes. Got a triple Mando right off the bat. So I didn't hit the window, I hit the E.
You broke the sign, as you said.
I did break the sign, yeah.
So then, just talk about your round in general. I mean, obviously it's a pretty challenging course.
Yeah, it was just very back and forth for me today. I felt like I had some good holes, and then I felt like I was fighting for pars on some holes, and then, the bogeys come. Bogeys do come out here. It's inevitable,
Right.
So if you can get those birdies early in the round, it really does help towards the end.
So, just in following you for the round, you're thanking the spotters, you're very encouraging to everybody. So, what do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I think, kindness is free, and sometimes people really need that little kindness in their life. I know that I've needed it, and people have come across and sprinkled some love upon me, and I remember that, so I try to pass that along to people that I don't know, so maybe they need it. You never know what people are going through, so it's good to just be kind.
Absolutely. All right, so now the reason I'm here as a NASCAR journalist is to talk to you about your interest in NASCAR. So I can't remember when it was or where it was an interview with you,
Yeah.
and you were asked the question, if you couldn't be a disc golf tour pro, what would you be? And your response was a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
So tell me where this started, your interest in NASCAR, when did it begin?
So when I was a little girl, me and my dad would watch NASCAR on, TV, and we would just watch them just wow, 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 just around that track, and I always really liked that. And I don't know, it's just like Ricky Bobby, I like going fast. And I have a love for cars, and that comes from my dad too. He had a 67 Camaro and a 69 Goat, and when they were up in their prime, dude, they were just something else, just the way they roared. And I like that a lot, so I carry that with me into my little NASCAR love. But my actual love for NASCAR is something really new. I haven't been to a race, and I want to, but it's something I'm still getting into, but I'm interested.
So do you ever watch any races? Because obviously you guys play on Sundays, but the races are on.
I've actually never seen a race. I haven't seen a race since I was a kid, so it's hard to really find time to. I'm always out here throwing frisbees around in the woods.
Right. So obviously you wouldn't have a favorite driver right now.
I always got a favorite driver. Race hell, praise Dell. Need I say any more? I mean, that's religion, right? That's a religion, NASCAR, I believe.
Okay, so now let's expand on that. Let's talk about, so obviously when you were watching, how old are you now, Kat?
I'm 23.
So Dell died in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So this was before your time, but obviously you've heard about the legend of Dell.
I've seen some little documentaries, man. I've seen a little bit. This guy I know. It's the only guy I know.
Well, there's also going to be another documentary coming out. I think it's in a few months on Dell. I think it's going to be on Max or Prime once the schedule switches over to one of those networks, and there's going to be a documentary. So there's something else you can. Just curious, as far as your interest in it, and you said you're relatively new. Have you thought about going to a race?
I would love to go to a race. I'd like to just be able to find some time. Disc golf really does consume all my time. It's not a bad thing, but it does. Like, I'm in Austin this week, right? So I haven't been able to get out and do anything because I've just been getting ready for the frisbee golf. It really is just time. I'd like to get out and do some more stuff.
Well, what I think is interesting to me is your interest in it, obviously from a childhood, and your dad and your influence. Obviously, fathers have influence on their kids, but the fact that you have never been to a race, because that's the thing that I tell people is you can watch it and people joke about it's just left turns. But then when you go to an actual race and you experience it, and it's like a 5D experience, because not only do you see how fast they're going, but like here at Circuit of the Americas, there are straightaways and there's turns, but the smells, and then of course the sound, and you actually feel your shirt vibrate because it's so loud. So I really want to encourage you, because I think you're going to do this, go to a race, and then I want to follow up with you, because I want to talk to you after you've actually experienced it, because it's a completely different thing than seeing it on TV. So do you think that you could get to a race this year?
Probably. I mean, I can make anything happen with a little manifestation and some decision making.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, I want to thank you for letting me follow you around today. It was a fun time. It was really nice to see your kindness and your positivity. And like you said, there is a desperate need of more of that in the world. So thank you for being a good disc golf player and a good human.
Thank you for coming out so early. 8:20 is pretty early, it's even for me.
And lastly, I interviewed Colten Montgomery. He's not only a diehard NASCAR fan, but also into grassroots racing. In fact, he made the short drive to Page, Texas from Austin to check out some World of Outlaws action over the weekend. Here's what he had to say. Obviously, I talked to your dad during the round, so you kind of give me a sense of how you got when you first started following NASCAR, and what was like the first experience that you remember.
Yeah, so I guess not directly NASCAR related, but my dad used to be on a pit crew back in Colorado at Colorado National Speedway. So ever since I was, 7, 8, 9 years old, I remember going to the races with Pops and watching all the guys in Colorado. I remember I still have my Dale Earnhardt racer jacket, my Casey Kane jacket from way back in the day. And then, yeah, obviously, like back in the day, those were my two big drivers. Number 8's my favorite number. And so, yeah, that's kind of like my first introduction to NASCAR. Currently, I travel the country playing disc golf, and my wife and I, it's been a couple years since we've been, but we've been to 3 NASCAR tracks across the country. We've been to the Roval in Charlotte, Phoenix, and Richmond. And birthday's coming up, so maybe trying to get tickets for the Bristol event, which is my birthday weekend. So maybe checking that out.
Okay, so I interviewed Kat earlier today, and she's a big fan. She's never been to a race. So what can you tell her? Because I talked to her about it. What can you tell her about what it's like to actually go to a race?
I've been to a lot of sporting events, NFL, NHL, NBA, all the professional sports, and there's nothing quite like a NASCAR race. Watching the big old planes do the flyover before the race, and honestly, I was shocked going to my first NASCAR race, like the different types of walks of life that actually go to NASCAR events. Like I thought it was, not that widespread, but when I was in Charlotte, there was like every type of person you could imagine at the NASCAR race, which is cool to see.
So, do you have a favorite driver?
I've got multiple favorite drivers.
Okay.
For Dad, and for a few years, Martin Truex Jr. has definitely been one that him and I like watching. For me personally, I like Kyle Larson in the aspect that he can jump behind the wheel of any car and race it, so gotta appreciate that. The story behind William Byron, like getting into sim racing, and that's like kind of how he's found his seat into a NASCAR spot. I think that's like very intriguing. And then I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, so Bubba Wallace up there, also one of my favorite drivers. So I got a handful, but gives me people to root for.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you, obviously, because it was a family thing and you got into it, have you got other people involved, like friends or your wife?
So, yeah, my wife was never really big into racing and stuff like that. And, I mean, last year when we were here in Texas, we checked out some dirt track racing all over the country. We checked out the Knoxville Nationals last year in Iowa. So we really like to just try and find some little races. Dad's here touring with me for this week, so we're going to try and go down and see the World Outlaws tomorrow, I think, in Page, Texas. So, yeah.
So a true race fan that just also happens to be a professional disc golfer.
Absolutely. And I think I have to say this. Sometimes I have a mustache going, and my grandma, literally, I could pull it up on my phone, but my grandma used to have a picture on her fridge of Dale Earnhardt Sr. and me when Dale was young and had his mustache, and it's like, side by side, we kind of look similar way back in the day when I have the mustache. So, fun story.
Well, your dad also said it wasn't the milkman.
Yeah, yeah, that's the running joke too, so.
All right, Colten, I really appreciate your time, bud.
Absolutely, thank you.
How crazy is that? There's an incredibly striking resemblance between the two. I told both of the players, and I've told you guys before, as a NASCAR journalist, I'm not a fan of any drivers. I cover them. But I am a fan of disc golf players, and these two moved into P1 in their respective divisions after my conversations with them over the weekend. I want to thank both of them for their time and allowing me to follow them on the course. And finally, I'm going to give away this disc signed by both Kat, Colten, and numerous other players, including two-time world champions in Ricky Wysocki and reigning champion Isaac Robinson, as well as 5-time champion Paige Pierce. Pierce told me she has attended 3 Daytona 500s. And be on the lookout because I'm planning on offering more of these discs for purchase in my store, along with my hats and shirts. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. We discussed a lot, and I want to get your thoughts from Saturday. What did you think of the comments from Elliott, Hamlin, and Busch on the improvements of the short track racing product due to Goodyear's work on the tire? Agree with Busch or Hamlin and Elliott? Later in the day, if you watched the Xfinity Series race, what did you think of Sam Mayer's late move on that restart? And does your opinion change after hearing his team radio? As for Sunday's race, what did you think when you saw that IndyCar's coverage was off the air? I know what I thought. And for the actual action, what are your thoughts on the days of Ty Gibbs and his achievement, Kyle Larson finally claiming his first win of 2025, and for you Blaney fans, are you concerned about what you've seen in the last 3 races from the Team Penske car? And finally, I want to hear what you guys thought of my interviews with the Disc Golf Tour pros and their NASCAR fandom. As I said, I'm giving away this disc, so to be eligible, all you need to do is write DG in the comments section. That's it, DG. Thanks again for checking out the latest episode and supporting the channel. I really and truly appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.